warning here.
Thank you.
Okay, I will also start the recording here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just as a backup.
Yeah, Germans say sicher is sicher, yeah? Like
Yes.
secure, double security, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. It should start in a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's actually, the stream should be live as well.
Okay, let me see if I can get into the one as well. Always have YouTube opened by the side to see if there's anyone commenting.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the next, the following, what is it, live coding, right, Lucas?
It's not really live coding, it's just reading
Live learning.
out loud while reading.
Yeah. It kind of serves right now as a live going together through the React documentation, but still it is whatever it is. Welcome everyone. And yeah, if we want, we can introduce ourselves like really quickly. And I will start with myself. I'm Karen, serving this community, trying to bring people together so that we learn and do stuff like this jointly, what is usually more fun. That's it from my side.
Georgi?
Sure. I'm Georgi, studying at Code University in Berlin currently. And yeah, I'm excited to meet you guys and see your live coding.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I'm Lucas and I live between Würzburg and Nuremberg, and I'm a freelance software developer.
Cool. Victor, if you want, you can say hi as well. But if not, it's also okay.
Yeah.
So what have we done, Lucas, before? It's a session number 4, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah, we did lots of stuff. We went through all of the React main concepts until the until the 9th chapter, and we did everything from the simple hello world and then JSX, React elements, React components, stateful and stateless components. We did also a little bit more about state and life cycle, handling events like click events and other HTML elements, events. And then we went through lists and keys and what this is all about in React. And yeah, we also learned about virtual DOM, and this week we are going to learn about forms in React. Yeah.
So the link you have posted is what we're going to start with today, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Let me see if I can really share that. Can everybody see this? Yeah.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Yeah. Okay.
For some reason, I cannot change the layout on the stream, what is really weird. No, it doesn't want to be changed. Okay, let's leave it there. You have a very big font, what is really nice. Everyone can see what's going on the screen. Yeah, it's chapter number which? 9.
It's the 9th.
Yeah,
Yes.
we have like 12 chapters in the React documentation. So we can start today with number 9, forms, and we have number 10 is lifting state up, whatever it is. Number 11,
interesting.
composition versus inheritance. Okay, and number 12, the last one, thinking in React. And I hope we can kill it today, or it will be too much. for one day?
I mean, I think it's also not that long, and it's more like not that technical, but more. Maybe we wanted to do like next week a session that is more focused on like real coding examples and putting all together what we already learned. Like,
yeah, that would be great. Georgi and Victor, whenever you have any idea, want to speak up, please do so. We are noobs ourselves, especially me, so feel free to jump in anytime. Okay, let's go, Lucas.
Okay. Do you want to start, because my mouth
is let me warm
dry
up
and I have to drink a little bit.
Okay, so the chapter forms. HTML form elements work a bit differently from other DOM elements in React, because form elements naturally keep some internal state. Okay, for example, this form is plain HTML except a single name. What we have here is an HTML code with an opening form tag. Then we have a label tag there. Name is the name of the label of the field, actually. And we have an input field of a type text, and the name is also name, but it's very creative. Another input field is of type submit, and the value is submit. So it's just a simple HTML form, what you would meet like on any web page or whatsoever. The input is name, like the form asks for the name to enter the name, and click submit button. There is no cancel button as well. So it's a very simplistic, like two fields, actually one field and one submit button form. This form has the default HTML form behavior of browsing to a new page when the user submits the form. Yes, but the interesting thing is there is no action behind this form. So I don't know what will actually happen if the user clicks submit.
I guess it will add parameters to the URL. Isn't that the default behavior?
The default is either get or post. I really forgot about it.
I think it's.
I don't know. Yeah, go on.
Wrong, it's get.
It's get by default, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it puts all of the values from the form with like the name as the key and the actual value as the value into this kind of parameters, or what you would call query in a URL scheme.
Yeah, that would happen if it goes as get, and this is probably, as Georgi says, is the default behavior of a form. So, and probably it will reference to itself, to the URL of the current page. So probably it will just send a GET request with the names of the fields, two fields, to the same page, and in the URL it will add the arguments.
Yeah, so it's GET. Like I already checked. So
very cool. Yeah. Nice. Okay, so let's continue. If you want this behavior in React, it just works. But in some cases, it's convenient to have a JavaScript function that handles the submission of the form and has access to the data that the user entered into the form. Okay, the standard way to achieve this is with a technique called controlled components. Controlled components. Okay, now we move to the subchapter controlled components. Lucas, can you scroll a little bit further? Oh, I fear we are either losing Lucas or we lost him.
Yeah, I think he freezed.
Okay.
And now
Lucas? Hello?
Lucas, scroll, please.
I'm already there.
Oh.
Hello?
Yeah. We can see your feed, but your screen is frozen.
Oh no. Just turn off the video if that helps.
Oh, okay. Now, no, it's actually still in the same position. Maybe you can stop sharing and start sharing again.
Yeah. Or maybe I will switch to LTE. That may be faster. I will disconnect for just a second, okay?
Yeah, okay. So that's interesting. React is kind of either pre-processing the forms or does some stuff on top of it. That's really interesting. And they call it, this technique is called controlled components.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
And see me?
Yeah, now we can also see you. What next?
Your screen? Tab I want to share. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, now we are in the right place. Let's continue. In HTML, form elements such as input, text area, and select typically maintain their own state and update it based on user input. Okay. In React, a mutable state is typically kept in the state property of components and only updated with set state. We can combine the two by making the React state be the single source of true. Then the React component that renders a form also controls what happens in that form on the subsequent user input. An input form elements value is controlled by React is in this way is called controlled component. For example, if we have to make the previous example log the name when it's submitted, we can write the form as a controlled component. Let's see now the React version of the very same form probably. So they have a component named name form, which extends a component, obviously. We have a constructor here going on. Okay, there are a few lines here in the constructor. One is a handle change assigned to, it's a binding, right? It's a binding procedure. Yeah. 2 lines of code. Handle change function is it sets the state of this component. Okay, handle submit is firing an alert, and then then does something what I don't really understand. And the render function returns the HTML code of the form, which we actually almost the same code we saw before in the example before. Interesting. Can we try it out? Is there a button to try it out? Yeah, let's try it out.
Be really easy. Okay, you can't see the alert.
Oh, you received an alert?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, Lucas, what is it?
Like
you are interrupting, Lucas.
Nothing special.
Okay.
Just
yeah,
like that.
I see.
I think that's special.
Yeah, so but it basically catches the input. It's a single source of truth as it was written in the documentation. So basically, this is where the state is kept, and then it propagates to the HTML code. But yeah, we have to learn like how to put it together, this kind of form, if you want to reprocess it or keep the state. So not very straightforward, but okay. let's move. Since the value attribute is set on our form element, the displayed value will always be this .state.value, making the React state the source of true. Okay. Since handle change runs on every keystroke to update the React state, the displayed value will update as the user types. Okay. With a controlled component, the inputs value is always driven by the React state. While this means you have to type a bit more code, you can now pass the value to other UI elements too, or reset it from other event handlers. Okay, let's see how the text area tag works. An HTML text area element defines its text by its children. Okay, I didn't quite understand it. In HTML, a text area element defines its text by its children. Oh, basically, text is a child of the text area.
Yes, and not like that you have an attribute called value or something like that with element.
Yeah, so basically in the DOM it will be a separate object, like nested under the text area element, probably. In React, a text area uses a value attribute instead. Okay, this way, a form using a text area can be written very similarly to a form that uses a single line input. Let's see how it works. So we have a component. It is a SA form, which has a constructor here, which the constructor defines a value, which is a string. Please write an essay about your favorite DOM element.
Just the initial state here. We also have like what we already know from the last example.
There is a handler on change and also on submit, or like handle change and handle submit. And the actual code is being rendered in the render function, which is returning. Yeah, it just
like the last example.
Exactly.
Text area, and yeah, it looks like.
But
this.
Here you have it. Here you have a value like inline, written inline. What is not the usual HTML, but React understands it. So okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Can we try it out? Is there no? There is no button for it. Notice that this .state.value is initialized in the constructor, so that the text area starts off with some text in it. Okay. Interesting. The select tag. In HTML, select creates a drop-down list. For example, this HTML creates a drop-down list of flavors. Select, opening select tag, then a few options there as separate tags, opening and closing tags. We have a selected value equal to coconut, and that's it. The select closes. Note that the coconut option is initially selected, because of the selected attribute. React, instead of using this selected attribute, uses a value attribute on the root select tag. Interesting. This is more convenient in a controlled component because you only need to update it in one place. For example, and here we have a component called flavor form. It has a constructor which assigns a handler for change and submit. And then there is a change function, a handle submit function, which is alerting something here, some text. And the render function also, it outputs the form. And what is interesting here is the opening select tag has a value property, which is equal to this dot state dot value. Okay. Interesting. It would be really nice to try it out to see how it works. Lucas, can you check? Yeah, they have a trial here. Okay. Pick your favorite. Can you pick something different, like instead of coconut? Grapefruit. Okay.
Yeah.
Mango. Submit mango if you will.
And it also shows like an alert.
Okay. So basically shows what's currently selected, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing you have to remember, selected attribute is value attribute on the select tag instead of on select each option you here on the select element.
Yeah, otherwise it would be, I guess, a little bit more messy, to set the selected attribute. In JavaScript, you have to have a kind of loop procedures there, like through all the options or whatever. I don't know. It just makes sense that they set it in the root tag. Okay, let's move further. Okay, overall, this makes it so that input type equal text area, and select all work very similarly. They all accept a value attribute that you can use to implement a controlled component. So this all fields are called control components. Okay. You can pass an array into the value attribute, allowing you to select multiple options in a select tag. Here we have an example with this opening select tag or single select tag, where multiple is equal true, but true in curly braces. So
yeah, that's how you inject JavaScript inside JSX.
Yeah. Okay.
Weird. This example is a little bit weird, but
and the value is equal to some array also in a curly braces. Okay. The file input tag. Okay, we have more. In HTML, an input type equal file lets the user choose one or more files from their device storage to be uploaded to a server or manipulated by JavaScript via the file API. Okay, we have an example here. It's a usual HTML input tag with a type of equal to file. Because its value is read-only, it is an uncontrolled component in React. Interesting. So there are controlled components and uncontrolled components. It is discussed together with other uncontrolled components later in the documentation. Okay, looking forward to it. Handling multiple inputs. When you need to handle multiple controlled input elements, you can add a name attribute to each element and let the handler function choose what to do based on the value of event.target.name. Here's an example. We have a reservation component, which has a construction. What is the constructor doing here? It sets the property is going to true. Yeah, and something else. Oh, it actually changes the state. Okay. Anything interesting in this component here? Handle input change. We have a handler here, input change. And the render. Yeah.
Yeah, let's scroll down.
Yeah, there is a form here with label is going with the input field name equal is going type checkbox checked. Reading the checked state here on change. Okay, another label number of guests. Okay, I'm curious if we have try it out like buttons there below. Yeah. Let's see what it does.
Scroll down. Also nothing that special here.
Okay. Yeah, let me quickly check. It was handling multiple inputs, right? As a part. Okay, that's why we have like two fields here with multiple inputs. Makes sense. So basically, but you would write like for every component, or it's a one component which has multiple fields.
And all use callback method, and that's interesting. Like access. And also the name of the target, which is like the event. Oh. You can use one for multiple elements, which is really interesting.
That's super interesting, yeah. One handler takes care of both fields, and inside of the function, it actually checks what does it handle, and then decides what to do with this.
Like there you have the name, which one has to, yeah. It's really interesting.
I guess you probably cannot write like different handlers for. Then you have to create two components out of it, I guess.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
I guess it's no. You can define two handlers in one component, or like multiple handlers. And second point is I wouldn't write one function for two inputs because it's like losing readability. And usually when you're working with different programmers, you don't want to have one big function for two input fields, which handles the work for you. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's less readable, I would say, this function. I would define two functions for two different inputs.
Yeah, that's agree with you. This is like I don't even see the reason why these are like different fields completely. Like one is a checkbox, another one is a number field.
I think they want to just show you that like you can do it in this way, and there is a possibility to do this way, but you don't have to.
I mean, I would say the example would make 20 checkboxes that have like behavior to write 20 different handler functions. Then it would make sense.
This for sure. Yeah, for sure. But for this example, you have like two different types of inputs, and it doesn't make so much sense for me personally.
Yeah, for me also don't. Yeah. Should we go further?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Now, note how we use the ES6 computed property name syntax to update the state key corresponding to the given input name. This dot set state curly braces opening name or like values value. That's even strange to read out.
But I really like the syntax. I used that like when it was brand new, and since then never wrote anything with it.
It is equivalent to this ES5 code. A variable partial state equal to curly braces, then partial state name in square braces equal to value. This dot set state, partial state. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
JavaScript always looks so exotic to me because I come from
Lucas, from time to time we are losing you.
just switch Wi-Fi connection.
You're switching to a wired connection now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
again?
now we can.
Yeah. JavaScript looks so exotic to me sometimes because I come from Dart and used it for the last 2-3 years and didn't write that much of JavaScript. But yeah, I also learned, like, this year started to relearn TypeScript, which I used when it was brand new, but since then never used, and it's so exotic in comparison to Dart, which is like a little bit more boring programming language to use.
So you did work with Flutter?
Yes.
Okay.
I worked since early 2018 with it when nobody knew it.
Yeah. Yeah, they founded it in 2017, I think, right?
Yes, and I guess it was also not even in a beta phase. It was like an early alpha or something. And since then, so much changed, but yeah, I really like it.
And still working, right?
Yes, and I also started some bigger projects now, but I didn't like have to convert or iterate on the code base so much because I had app projects from 2018 and all of the things, all of the syntax of the libraries changed, everything was deprecated and everything. Also Dart syntax changed. I had to, that was already like a part-time job to do only that. And yeah, now I'm really looking forward to writing a newer Dart code and newer Flutter apps that already start with the newest version of it.
I think Flutter is now on null safety, right?
Yes.
They have this, yeah. But you don't have to use null safety. You can write your code also without null safety, right?
Yeah, but I started with null safety and all of the new features, and yeah.
Okay.
But I also have some like 4 or 5 older Dart libraries I wrote that I still have to update to null safety, and that's also something for this or next month.
Okie doke. So let's continue with the tutorial. Also, since set state automatically merges a partial state into the current state, we only needed to call it with a changed part.
Yeah, I did it last week. Yeah.
I don't remember anymore, but I believe you, Lucas.
The JSON object has or 3 different keys, and you just update one of it. It merges everything together. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Controlled input null value. Specifying the value prop on a controlled component prevents the user from changing the input unless you desire so. If you have specified a value, but the input is still editable, you may have accidentally set value to undefined or null. The following code demonstrates this. The input is locked at first, but becomes editable after a short delay. We have a React DOM.render, which sends the input field with a value equal to high. And then we have a set timeout function, which what it does, it also renders the same input field with a value null in curly braces, and sets a timeout of, I guess, what is it, like 1000 microseconds or
Milliseconds.
Milliseconds. Okay.
1 second.
Oh, okay. So it will just have a delay of 1 second, right?
Yeah, and after it will call the callback function and render the input with the value of null, and then this input is editable, because the first line is there is a constant value of high, so you cannot change it, and if you have null, then you can change it.
Yes, Lucas, wanted to add something?
I wanted to say
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a variable?
No.
Okay. Got it.
Exclamation. Okay. Yeah, should we continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell me that we are done with this chat. No, it continues actually.
We are nearly finished.
Okay.
Okay. Should I read?
Yeah, no, I can finish this chapter and then you can start with a new one.
Okay.
Alternatives to controlled components. It can sometimes be tedious to use controlled components because you need to write an event handler for every way your data can change and pipe all of the input state through a React component. Okay. This can become partially annoying when you are converting a pre-existing code base to React, or integrating a React application with a non-React library. In these situations, you might want to check out uncontrolled components, an alternative technique for implementing input forms. Okay, something tells me I will like more uncontrolled components, but let's see what it is. Maybe it will come in the next chapter. Fully fledged solutions.
It's an entirely independent article in the docs, the uncontrolled components. I mean,
okay. So they're not covering it in this kind of track, right?
No.
Okay.
But should we look into it?
Yeah, maybe once we finished with this chapter, like really briefly to see what's going on there.
Yeah.
If it's like completely crazy or something like graspable.
Yeah. Okay, we also don't have like that much of text.
Okay. Fully fledged solutions. If you are looking for a complete solution, including validation, keeping track of the visited fields, and handling form submissions, Formic is one of the popular choices. Okay, it sounds like a library. However, it is built on the same principles of controlled components and managing states, so don't neglect to learn them. What is this Formic? Can you please click on it?
Yeah. Okay. Build React forms without the tiers.
Oh. What is it like? Is it like external provider, like in Jamstack stuff, you would...
It's a library.
Oh, it's a library. So you can integrate it into your code.
Yeah, should be. But it looks so commercialized. You see it there.
Well, that's okay. Maybe they have a free offering, and then a product on top of it. Georgi, are you familiar with this Formic stuff?
No, with Formic not. But I guess it's an external library which it renders the form and abstracts the logic behind it, maybe the forms.
Okay.
And so it seems that you can use it with the functional components. So you don't need to, But class-based components are deprecated anyways. I mean, React recommends to use functional-based components because you have this React hooks, which you can handle all the states, so you don't have to write constructors with classes and stuff. So yeah.
But I understood I understood it that function components are stateless, and when you write them as classes, they have a state.
It was back then, but now it's like you can even use functional components and put state inside of it. Are you familiar with useState function, useState hook of React?
Nope.
Yeah, so it's like I think this is. Are you at the main concepts, right? I think when you scroll down, you can see like the update React things there. So I mean, I'm pretty experienced in React, and I'm writing all my projects
hooks
with functional components, and this is what the hooks. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah, that's also.
Yeah. But I think it's
we
good
have
to understand also like the basics of class-based components, because the principle is the same with functional-based components.
Yeah, I also started React like weeks ago, not that long, and it's very similar to Flutter with state and set state, and I was like confused that Flutter is like just like they plagiarized everything from.
Flutter was my first framework, and then I switched to React. But I'm also programming Flutter, not that much currently, but yeah, it's really similar with the components and the state lifting up, lifting down. Yeah, sure.
And I mean also like the state management, if you have like unidirectional data flow and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I mostly use block pattern in Flutter, but I didn't look into that much of the other state management solutions. I mean, like not like there are some things that are adapted from React to Flutter, some libraries, but I didn't look into them. But yeah.
Did you also work with provider?
Yeah, but it's sometimes too simple to do. Or nowadays I mostly work with qubits, which is a part of block library. Have you used Flutter in like last year or something? Because
last year, no, not really. Last year, not really.
It's a very recent addition to the block library. It's really interesting. You should definitely check it out.
I mostly use the provider, so that's why I was working with provider. I didn't use block.
Yeah, I built a huge app entirely with blocks and nearly no stateful widgets, because blocks and block provider and block consumer block, I don't know how it's called, because I also am not that much into it in the last, but yeah, it's really working great. And
if I start with Flutter again, I will check it out.
Block library, do that. Yeah, I think we finished this chapter.
Yeah, Lucas, let's scroll a little bit higher, and uncontrolled components. Can you click there?
Yeah, I already opened it.
Oh, okay. So what is it? In most cases, we recommend using controlled components to implement forms. In a controlled component, form data is handled by a React component. The alternative is uncontrolled components, where form data is handled by the DOM itself. Interesting. To write an uncontrolled component, instead of writing an event handler for every state update, you can use a ref to get form value from the DOM. For example, the code accepts a single name in an uncontrolled component. So we have a component called name form. Construct there. It doesn't do anything like special, I guess. Look, create ref is there. Handle submit function, which does some alerting going on, and the render function, which returns a form, HTML form.
For me, this looks a little bit like if you have like vanilla JavaScript and you use like select element by ID, or how this one function is called, a document.get element by ID, and somehow like this, but a bit different. Yeah. Okay.
So we are using kind of native handler or assignment of onSubmit of the form. It's a property which is equal to the handler, submit handler of the component.
Georgi, do you know if this is just like a wrapper around the normal vanilla JavaScript library?
Yeah, what it basically does is, this is similar to what you have mentioned. When you get from documents the elements and then grabbing the values of it. So what input.current is, this is the DOM object, the input object.
Yeah, so it's just a wrapper around the vanilla JavaScript.
Basically.
Video because you missed a lot. We have like a series of streams on YouTube where we covered like all of the live coding, or not really live coding, all of where we went along with documentation from react.org, and I can also like send you the link so you can read it at your own pace. This is where you can start.
Yeah, the stream is up meanwhile, and we have on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, we have a playlist for this series of events.
We already have a nice playlist.
I will find and share it with you like in a few seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, but the stream is up now. We can continue, I guess, right?
Yeah. Okay. I guess now it's my turn to read everything.
Okay.
Lifting state up. Often several components need to reflect the same change in data. We recommend lifting the shared state up to the closest common ancestor. Let's see how this works in action. In this section, we will create a temperature calculator that calculates whether the water would boil at a given temperature. We will start with a component called boiling verdict. It accepts the Celsius temperature as a prop and prints whether it is enough to boil the water. Okay. Just a function component here. And for 100 degrees Celsius, it will return like a JSX expression with P element in it that would say the water would boil, and otherwise it would just say the water would not boil. Next, we will create a component called calculator. It renders an input that lets you enter the temperature and keeps its value in this.state.temperature. Additionally, it renders the boiling verdict for the current input value. Then we have a stateful React component, which is called calculator, with a constructor and a state which is set to nothing, that is temperature, and a change handler. And yeah. Okay, interesting. Should I also read out what is in the render?
No, I mean, you can try it on the code pen. Let's see how it looks like.
Yeah,
because
it's faster.
Plenty of text there to read and tags and everything.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
Oh, that's interesting. It actually reacts on the number you enter there.
Okay. Let's see what's next here. Because it's not that interesting right now. I mean, you just pass like this value to another component. Adding a second input. Our new requirement is that in addition to a Celsius input, we provide a Fahrenheit input and they are kept in sync. We can start by extracting a temperature new input component from calculator. We will add a new scale prop to it that can be either C for Celsius or F for Fahrenheit. Yeah. Then we have the scale names and temperature input, which has like an input field for temperature and also a handler with it. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. We can now change the calculator to render two separate temperature inputs. But what I now if I understand it correctly, they are now not synced because they just maintain their own state and don't have this part that syncs them. Let's also try that on CodePen. Okay.
Let's see how it works actually.
Just
yeah, they're not
separate
synced.
components. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Let's continue. We have two inputs now, but when you enter the temperature in one of them, the other doesn't update. This contradicts our requirement. We want to keep them in sync. We also can't display the boiling verdict from calculator. The calculator doesn't know the current temperature because it is hidden inside the temperature input because
we can't see the text, sorry. We can't see your text, or is it lagging on my side?
Oh, it was. I forgot to. Yeah. I guess this is because, yeah, temperature input just maintains their own state. Yeah. Okay. Next thing is that we write conversion functions. First, we will write two functions that convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit and back. Yeah. Nothing too special here.
Just the functions with a calculation of corresponding units, right?
Yeah. These two functions convert numbers. This will write another function that takes a string temperature and a converter function as arguments and returns a string. We will use it to calculate the value of one input based on the other input. It returns an empty string on an invalid temperature and it keeps the output rounded to the third decimal place. Function convert, temperature convert. Okay. Okay, it takes the temperature and parses it, and if it's a number, then returns nothing. Output be like converted, then it will round it, convert it to a string. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. We give we give the converter function, the actual one we have here, as a parameter, which then will be called here. It's really interesting. I think also a clever way to do this. Yeah. Okay. Guess that is how we connect everything here. Lifting state up. Currently, both temperature input components independently keep their values in the local state. Yeah. Like that, they have their own state, set it, and render it. Okay. However, we want these two inputs to be in sync with each other. When we update the Celsius input, the Fahrenheit input should reflect the converted temperature and vice versa. Sharing state is accomplished by moving it up to the closest common ancestor of the component that need it. This is called lifting state up. We move the local state from temperature input and move it into the calculator instead. If the calculator owns the shared state, it becomes the source of truth for the current temperature in both inputs. It can instruct them both to have values that are consistent with each other. Since the props of both temperature input components are coming from the same parent calculator component, the two inputs will always be in sync. Let's see how this works step by step. Okay. First, we will replace this.state.temperature with this.props.temperature in the temperature input component. For now, let's pretend this.props.temperature already exists, and although we will need to pass it from the calculator in the future. Okay. So you just pass it as a prop instead of having it as a local state. Okay. We know that props are read-only. When the temperature was in the local state, the temperature input could just call this.setState to change it. However, now that the temperature is coming from the parent as a prop, the temperature input has no control over it. In React, this is usually solved by making a component controlled. Just like the DOM input accepts both a value and an onChange prop, so can the custom temperature input accept both temperature and temperature change props from its parent calculator. Then the temperature prop will then be the value, and on temperature change will be the callback. That's right, isn't it? Okay, now when the temperature input wants to update its temperature, it's called this.props.onTemperature change. And we will put that here into this handle change method we had. Okay. It's a lot of stuff. Am I rushing too much, or is my tempo okay?
I guess that's okay. Not that I'm understanding everything. I don't know. Georgi is probably fine. Victor, hopefully also fine.
Yeah. Okay. Note, there is no special meaning to either temperature or on temperature change. Prop names is in custom components. We could have called them anything else with name, like name them value and on change, which is a common convention. So it's, yeah. Okay, nothing special here, just that you are free to call the props whatever you want. Okay. The on temperature change prop will be provided together with the temperature prop by the parent calculator component. It will handle the change by modifying its own local state, thus re-rendering both inputs with the new values. we will look at the new calculator implementation very soon. Before, okay, we already had like a whole book or like 20 pages, and I will, yeah, okay, we see the source code very soon. Okay, before diving into the changes in the calculator, let's recap our changes to the temperature input component. First, we have removed the local state from it, and instead of reading this.state.temperature, we now read this.props.temperature. Second, instead of calling this.setState, when we want to make a change, we now call this.props.onTemperatureChange, which will be provided by the calculator, or both will be provided by the calculator. Okay, let's see this source code. We have a temperature input component. Let's see it all together. And we now see that we don't set this.setState, but this.props.onTemperatureChange and provide the value to it.
That's different from the previous example.
Yeah. And we also provide this.props.temperature here instead of like putting this.state.temperature in here. Yeah. And also we have like the scale name, which is either Fahrenheit or Celsius. Okay. Nice. Now let's turn to the calculator component. Okay, we will store the current input's temperature and scale in its local state. This is the state we lifted up from the inputs, and it will serve as the source of truth for both of them. It is the minimal representation of all the data we need to know in order to render both inputs. For example, if we enter 37 into the Celsius input, the state of the calculator component will be, yeah, like a JSON object with key temperature and value 37 and scale as another key, and C for Celsius as a value. If we later added the Fahrenheit field to be 212, the state of the calculator will be temperature is set to 212 and scale is F for Fahrenheit. Okay. We could have stored the value of both inputs, but it turns out to be unnecessary. It is enough to store the value of the most recently changed input and the scale that it represents. We can then infer the value of the other input based on the current temperature and scale alone. This input stays in sync because their values are computed for the same state. Okay. Okay. Let's see the source code. Okay.
Yeah. So we have a calculator component here, which has a construction with some state. Yeah, it just takes, I guess, state as an input and sets it somewhere in the construction phase. Two handlers and a render function, which just, oh, it evaluates actually something. Celsius is equal scale, triple equal F. It's a evaluation going on here. Yeah.
Yeah, if the scale is set to Fahrenheit, we want to convert it to Celsius, and if it's, yeah, if not, it will just be passed. And also for the Fahrenheit, it will be the opposite of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Two temperature input components here being rendered, and one boiling verdict also was added.
Yeah, one temperature input for the Celsius and one for the Fahrenheit here.
Should look really great. Let's see how it looks like.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I should like close all of the other CodePen tabs. I had like 10 other CodePen tabs opened. Yeah, let's see if it actually works.
Yeah.
Okay, it actually works. Nice.
Yeah. Try with the Fahrenheit. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
That's almost a whole blown application here already. You can have a BME calculator or something like this going on.
Let's commercialize it and build an like
yeah. I don't know like how many thousands of BME calculators are out there.
Yeah.
Or
let's put a paywall around it and then
sure.
Yeah.
Temperature calculator. Great.
Okay, let's continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, no matter which input you added, this.state.temperature and this.state.scale in the calculator get updated. One of the inputs gets the value as is. So any user input is preserved and the other input value is always recalculated based on it. Okay. Yeah. Let's recap what happens when you added an input. React calls the function specified as onChange on the DOM input. In our case, this is the handleChange method in the Fahrenheit temperature input component. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Second step is the handleChange method is the temperature input component. In the temperature input component calls this.props.onTemperatureChange with the new desired value. Its props, including onTemperatureChange, were provided by its parent component, the calculator. Okay. When it previously rendered, the calculator had specified that onTemperatureChange of the Celsius temperature input in the calculator's handled Celsius change method, and onTemperatureChange of the Fahrenheit temperature input is the calculator's handle Fahrenheit change method. So either of these two calculator methods gets called depending on which input we edited. Inside these methods, the calculator components asks React to re-render itself by calling this.setState with the new input value and the new current scale of the input we just edited. React calls the calculator component's render method to learn what the UI should look like. The values of both inputs are recomputed based on the current temperature and the active scale. The temperature conversion is performed here. React calls the render methods of the individual temperature input components with the new props specified by the calculator. It learns what their UI should look like. And then React calls the render method of the boiling verdict component, passing the temperature in Celsius as its props. React DOM updates the DOM with the boiling verdict and to match the desired input values. The input we just edited receives its current value, and the other input is updated to the temperature after conversion. Every update goes through the same steps, so the same input stays in sync. Oh, that was a long text.
Yes.
To drink.
Last sub chapter, and you are done.
Yeah. Okay. Lessons learned. there should be a single source of truth for any data that changes in a React application. Usually the state is first added to the component that needs it for rendering. Then if other components also need it, you can lift it up to the closest common ancestor. Instead of trying to sync the state between different components, you should rely on the top-down data flow.
This is where we see the term lifting up. So this is the concept of lifting up, yeah? Like if you need a single state, or that's how you have to move it in the hierarchy. Sorry, you can.
Because you can't like get the state easily out of a component, so you have to pass the state to a component that should work with it.
Imagine what kind of mess it will be like if you will be randomly like changing states of different components, you know.
Yeah.
You will get lost probably.
This also can get really messy. I remember it from Flutter a lot. If like widgets or in this case components maintain like a lot of their own states, and you have to also pass it through all of the components or widgets. So
I think Georgi said that it's the same principle in Flutter, exactly the same lifting up, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say something. This example is really like complicated. They made it really complicated because I mean, what lifting state up basically is you have two components, and if the components share like same state, then you have to define another parent component, and you have to share this the state from the parent.
Yeah.
So they made it really complicated for me. I mean,
the example itself, the source code isn't complicated. It's the text around it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's complex. You have to understand it first. The context, you know, you have first the principle and the context. And the context is not too complicated for me. I mean, they could also like do something like really simple, you know, to understand the lifting up, and then they could provide as an additional example this example. I mean, I don't know, it's just my opinion.
I mean, most of the times you would just, or sometimes you would like need to change it in one component and just display it in the other components that share like this state. So it's, a little bit complicated with all of the conversion methods and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you have then the type of the input, you know, as well. And you have to understand, okay, why, and then, all of very common example with lifting state up is when you have a input field and a list, which changes based on the input field value. So you have input component and the list component, and then you have the parent, and then you are kind of giving the props to the list, and it changed based on the input value. This is like common example actually.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah. Okay. Where was I? Okay, top-down data flow. Okay, next paragraph. Lifting state involves writing more boilerplate code than two-way binding approaches. But as a benefit, it takes less work to find and isolate bugs, since any state lives in some component and that component alone can change it. The surface area for bugs is greatly reduced. Additionally, you can implement any custom logic to reject or transform user input. Okay. Anything to add to that paragraph? Guess not.
They just justify the way how it was designed, I guess.
Yeah. But it can really get messy if you have like 10 components in each other and huge trees of components nested into each other. Like if you have it with Flutter, so you need to. I mean, I'm really interested in like the more complex state management solutions. Like there must be something similar to provider or block in Flutter in React, and that's what gets interesting for me.
There is actually. This is called use context, but you can. I think you can only. I mean, you can definitely use it with functional components because this is the new feature. Use context, but I don't know if it's also exists in class-based. I get no. Sorry, you can do it with both class-based and functional components.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, nice.
This is kind of provider in Flutter context.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and there are also things like, correct me if I'm wrong, something called like reactive X or something like that. Or am I completely like other state management solutions that are more like flow-based and all of that stuff? But
I guess Redux, they have Redux.
Redux, that's it, yeah.
Yeah, you can also use it in Flutter, right? Redux.
Yeah, that's where I saw it, and I heard it's like just a re-implementation for Flutter from React.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So really interesting to see all of these concepts now inside React, not just Flutter. Yeah. Okay. Next paragraph. If something can be derived from either props or state, it probably shouldn't be in the state. Okay. For example, instead of storing both Celsius value and Fahrenheit value, we store just the last edited temperature and its scale. The value of the other input can always be calculated from them in the render method. This lets us clear or apply rounding to the other field without losing any precision in the input, user input. Okay, yeah. Nothing that special. It's pretty much self-explanatory, in my opinion.
We have a animated GIF there going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just shows, I guess, how this thing works, and also below what kind of behavior the underlying JavaScript has, or not even JavaScript, it's React actually, right?
Yeah. Nice React developer tools. When you see something wrong in the UI, you can use React developer tools to inspect the props and move up the tree until you find the component responsible for updating the state. This lets you trace the bugs to their source. Yeah, this is really interesting to see that this basically shows the virtual DOM and how it changes. That's right.
This is not the virtual DOM, but the components inside the React. Virtual DOM is on the elements tag when you click on elements section.
Okay. Or I mean the React DOM, which is basically the elements. I meant that, not like the HTML, like the literal DOM, or how you call it. Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Guys, how to get this React developer tools? Is it like part of usual developer tools?
You have to install it in my.
This is the extension of Google. You can just install it on Google Chrome, and it will work.
Nice. Yeah,
that's
I see
cool.
it, but I have to find like a trusted link to the.
But is this link will not guide you there to the it's an active link actually?
I think so. Yeah, you have to just click on it.
It guides you to like a GitHub repository, but it's.
Okay. Wait a minute.
But I want to find like a version on the Chrome thing store, which isn't like mining Bitcoins or something in the background. Yeah. Search with React Native. No, not React Native. Please not.
This is the link, I guess, that I provided.
Yeah, Georgi posted the link. Okay. Lucas, if you want, you can check it out.
Yeah. Okay, it's
React developer tools offered by Facebook. Seems like legit.
I mean, yeah.
It even works with Brave. Nice. What is obviously like Chrome based.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like trustworthy in the sense of user privacy, but at least they are not mining bitcoins in the background or
Yeah, maybe it's not calling phone either.
Don't have like a connection to North Korea or something like that. Yeah, okay. Sorry. Okay, this was the chapter lifting state up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very interesting chapter indeed.
Yeah.
But we have two more left, which is composition versus inheritance. One of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
Let's see how much from it I can understand. So let's go on. React has a powerful composition model, and we recommend using composition instead of inheritance to reuse code between components.
I already know what this chapter is about. Nice.
Okay. In this section, we will consider a few problems where developers new to React often reach for inheritance and show how we can solve them with composition. Containment. Some components don't know their children ahead of time. This is especially common for components like sidebar or dialog that represent generic boxes. Okay? We recommend that such components use the special children prop to pass children elements directly into their output. What we have here is a function called fancy border, which requires props or takes them as an input and then returns an opening div tag with the class name equal to curly braces fancy border, blah blah blah. Here are some colors. A color will be added also. And inside there is a props.children in curly braces as well, and the closing div. Okay. This lets other components pass arbitrary children to them by nesting the GS6. And as a function here called welcome dialog, which returns a component fancy border with a color equal to blue, h1 inside, with a class name dialog title, with a message welcome, so it will be the h1 text and the paragraph here with some text inside. And it's of a class name dialog message. Thank you for visiting our spacecraft. Okay. Try it on CodePen. I don't know if you will try it there. Is there anything interesting what will blow our mind? Okay, just shows a message. Welcome, blah, blah. Okay. Let's get back to the text. Anything inside the fancy border tag, GS6 tag actually, it gets passed into the fancy border component as a children prop. Since fancy border renders props.children, inside a div, the passed element appear in the final output. While this is less common, sometimes you might need multiple holes in a component. In such cases, you might come up with your own convention instead of using children. What we have here is a function split pane. It returns one div, another div inside, and another div inside, and then closing div. The interesting here is the class names, I guess, of the divs, and the props left and props.right. These are the children, I guess. Or guys, if you have any idea what's going on here, feel free to jump in anytime.
I think the left and right are attributes of the split pane JS6 tag.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, whenever you pass, for example, for left context, it will display in the props.left context tag, split pane minus left class name, yeah, this div. And yeah, that's all. And what it does is it displays like two containers next to each other, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems so because you have context and chat. It would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But with children, it's also a little bit like with Flutter, where you have that for like the standard components, but
I think in Flutter, do you have children? No, you are passing in the constructor the properties, right?
Yeah.
But here you are passing in the between the text, between the opening and closing text.
Yeah.
So this is what is considered as props.children.
Yeah. So it's basically a very special one.
Yeah. So you don't have to write inside of the tag children equals blah blah. You can just inside the closing.
If you have like a closing and an opening and closing HTML tag in your JSX, and you can put into it children, which is like a
exactly
thing. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, let us see the last part of the code example here. There was an app, something. Yeah, the function called app, and here it returns the split pane component, which is left is equal to context component, and the right is equal to chat component. Let's really see how it works. If it should have a button like try it out on CodePen. Yeah, it kind of mimics like a chat here, but there's no content inside, right?
No.
Oh, the split pane, can you like move the border between two left and right? If you go with the mouse, no, it doesn't work this way.
At last, it has like a fixed ratio or something.
Oh yeah.
It's somewhere in the CSS, but I guess that's not what matters here. It's more that you have like that you don't have children, but you have like defined yourself like left and right for the children that this split pane has, and left is set here with its contacts and right with the chat. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I think they will develop it further in the next in the following text. React elements like contact, and chat are just objects, so you can pass them as props like any other data. This approach may remind you of slots in other libraries, but there are no limitations on what you can pass as props in React. Okay. Lucas, can you scroll a little bit further? Yeah. Specialization. Sometimes we think about components as being special cases of other components. For example, we might say that a welcome dialog is a special case of dialog. Okay. In React, this is also achieved by composition, where a more specific component renders a more generic one and configures it with props. The function called dialog here returns fancy border component with the property color set to blue. H1 is there, paragraph is also there below it, and the fancy border component is closing. There's another function called welcome dialog, which returns dialog component with a different title called, or the value is welcome of the title, and the message is equal, thank you for visiting our spacecraft. Okay, got it. I mean, yeah, it doesn't make sense to try it on CodePen. It will be just a dialog there. Composition works equally well for components defined as classes. Okay, we have a function dialog here, which returns fancy border with an h1 and a paragraph inside. And the fancy border is closing. Then there's a class called sign up dialog, which is indeed a component. It has a constructor. Interesting. And there is a render function as well, which returns dialog component with a title, blah, 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 message this, and how you should be referred to you. Input element, or should I say input tag, and in button tag, and also a closing one. Okay. And we have one handler called handle change and another handler called handle sign up. Okay. That would be probably interesting to see how it works on code. So we have a dialog here, Mars exploration program. How should we refer to you? You write some name or anything there. And once you click sign up, does it fire any anything?
Yeah, it shows an HTML dialog.
Okay.
But I'm too lazy to switch
no worries.
screen presentation.
Yeah, no worries. Let's just continue with it next, I would say. So what about inheritance? At Facebook, we use React in thousands of components, and we haven't found any use cases where we should recommend creating component inheritance hierarchies. Props and composition give you all the flexibility you need to customize a component's look and behavior in an explicit and safe way. Remember that components may accept arbitrary props, including primitive values, React elements, or functions. If you want to reuse non-UI functionality between components, we suggest extracting it into a separate JavaScript module. So the components may import it and use that function, object, or a class without extending it. Okay. So this is probably their best practices or whatever.
So from what I understood, it is like that you don't really extend classes or something like that, but you just do it with the composition, like in this JSX manner, so to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Georgi said, I know it was a surprise what Georgi said today that they're kind of deprecating classes, like class-based components, right?
Yes. I guess it is official React team recommends to use functional-based components with hooks, with React hooks, because you are writing less code and it's more readable. And this is the main reason. There are no disadvantages which concept you're using or which type of components you use. So I'm always using functional based components with the hooks. Yeah. And it also has more flexibility regards to managing state inside your app.
Yeah, I can definitely confirm from my side that the functional components are way more readable, at least for newbies in React like me.
Much less boilerplate.
Yeah. But functional programming was always disadvantaged comparing to object-oriented. So I didn't expect that, but that's nice to hear that I'm not alone. That many people are. Seems like finding it also more convenient, like easier to understand. And yeah, that's a advantage for me at least to learn React now and use it as in a functional manner more.
Yeah.
Very cool. Let's finish up this chapter.
Yeah, it was already finished.
Oh,
didn't
okay.
you? Did you like the last paragraphs?
Yeah. Where was I? Yeah, just let's read the last one. If you want to reuse non-UI functionality between components, we suggest extracting it into separate. Oh, we actually went through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have the last chapter left.
Nice. We were really productive today.
Yeah. That's
still
because
are.
Georgi, our React expert, is in the call. It goes much faster.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah. Okay. Thinking in React. React is, in our opinion, the premier way to build big, fast web apps with JavaScript. It has scaled very well for us at Facebook and Instagram. One of the many great parts of React is how it makes you think about apps as you build them. In this document, we'll walk you through the thought process of building a searchable product data table using React. Okay, start with a mock. Imagine that we already have a JSON API and a mock from our designer. The mock looks like this. Okay, not the best designer in my opinion, but yeah. Okay. Our JSON API returns some data that looks like this. Okay, just some JSON JSON objects in an array that display should maybe represent some products. Okay. Step 1, break the UI into a component hierarchy. The first thing you'll want to do is to draw boxes around every component and the subcomponent in the mock and give them all names. If you're working with a designer, they may have already done this, so go talk to them. Their Photoshop layer names may end up being the names of your React components. But how do you know what should be its own component? Techniques for deciding if you should create a new function or object. One such technique is the single responsibility principle. That is, a component should ideally only do one thing. If it ends up growing, it should be decomposed into smaller subcomponents, a little bit like the Unix philosophy. Not every program should do just one thing. Okay. Since you're often displaying a JSON data model to a user, you'll find that if your model was built correctly, your UI, and therefore your component structure will map nicely. That's because UI and data models tend to adhere to the same information architecture. Separate UI into components, where each component matches one piece of your data model. Okay, nice. We have like the whole component. Then we have like the search mask with some filters. Then we have a list. As one component, it has like a legend, and then it has like all of the individual products rendered inside of it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's also like a little bit like, is someone here familiar with atomic design?
Not really.
It's also like a way to structure your applications in some form of components, where they use like a metaphor of like that you have atoms, which is like the smallest things that are non-dividable. Like if you have a button or a search or an input field or like text paragraph, it's not like it's one thing you design, and then you put it together with some other parts, like you would have in the search mask. You have one atom which is like the input field, and the other one is the checkbox, and the other one is the label for the checkbox. And together, this would be called then a molecule, and then this would like get rendered into like bigger things. Don't know what they call it, like templates and layouts, and these templates then together with the actual content create pages and something like that. It's basically how this metaphor goes.
Mm-hmm. Where is it used? Like, is it recommended for specific framework or language?
It's just a little bit more abstract concept, and nearly all like front-end frameworks incorporate it in some way, not like literally, but with like other names and stuff like that, because I don't know like any popular frameworks that call it atoms and molecules, but in React you would have like elements and components and like similar names that or different names that stand for something very similar.
Okay.
Yeah. Atomic Design is also a book which is not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. You'll see here that we have 5 components in our app. We've italicized the data each component represents. I haven't heard of that word. Okay. First, filterable product table, orange. Okay. Then the search bar, blue. Product table, which is green. Product category row. Product row. Okay, nice. Yeah. If you look at product table, you'll see that the table header containing the name and price labels isn't its own component. This is a matter of preference, and there's an argument to be made either way. For example, we left it as part of product table because it is part of rendering the data collection, which is product table's responsibility. However, if this header grows to be complex, for example, if we were to add affordances for sorting, it would certainly make sense to make this its own product table header component. Basically, they are talking about this first line, which contains name and price. Okay, yeah, interesting. Note that we identified the components in our mock. Let's arrange them into a hierarchy. Okay. Components that appear within another component in the mock should appear as a child in the hierarchy. Okay. Filterable product table, and child of that is the search bar, and also product table. And the product table, it has the product category row, a row, and product rows. Yeah. Okay, nice. Step 2, build a static version in React. See the pen, thinking in React, step 2 on CodePen. Now that we have your component hierarchy, it's time to implement your app. The easiest way is to build a version that takes your data model and renders the UI, but has no interactivity. It's best to decouple these processes because building a static version requires a lot of typing and not thinking. And additional interactivity requires a lot of thinking and not a lot of typing. We'll see why. Should I open the code pen? I mean, I guess it's just like some code, but I mean, I think this chapter is more about like the principles, not like code, actual code of this example.
Yeah, looks like this is like how you actually build, how you, well, like what are the phases, how to build a React app.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. To build a static version of your app that renders your data model, you'll want to build components that reuse other components and pass data using props. Props are a way of passing data from parent to child. If you're familiar with the concept of state, don't use state at all to build this static version. State is reserved only interact, that is, over time. Static version of the app, you don't need it. Okay. You can build top-down or bottom-up. That is, you can either start with building the component higher up in the hierarchy. For example, starting with filterable product table, or with the ones lower in it, product row, for example. In simpler examples, it's usually easier to go top-down, and on larger projects, it is easier to go bottom-up and write tests as you build. Okay. Yeah, I mostly like start with like from both sides at the same time.
Interesting approach.
Yeah, I mean, I give myself like a framework that I build like the highest up components in the hierarchy, and then start off with like the innermost components. So yeah, that's basically how I do it, and then I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. At the end of this step, you'll have a library of reusable components that render your data model. We have render methods since this is a static version of your app. The component at the top of the hierarchy, filterable product table, will take your data model as a prop. If you make a change to your underlying data model and call React DOM.render again, this UI will be updated. You can see how your UI is updated and where to make changes. React's one-way data, also called one-way binding, keeps everything modular and fast. One-way data flow means that you have props and can put values inside of that you can inject values into a component but can't get something out of it. Yeah.
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 I think we confronted this concept somewhere in the like I don't know, like chapter 5 or 4 or something like this.
Yeah.
That it was like this immutable, I guess, concept, right?
Yes. Maybe or not. Yeah. Okay. It's connected with that, because immutable in this case means that we don't like have immutable means that we can, I mean, it's connected with it, so you can't like return any values from it, but it's somehow connected, but
yeah,
not really.
Yeah. Okay.
A brief interlude: props versus state. There are two types of model data in React: props and state. It's important to understand the distinction between the two. Skim the official React docs if you aren't sure what the difference is. See also what is the difference between state and props. Okay, I think we did that. Or we know the difference.
Yeah, I mean, for now, we saw the difference there in many examples, but For now, we can go to the next subchapter.
Yeah, props are injected to a component, and state is local and inside a component and doesn't get injected or something. Okay, let's see. Step 3. Identify the minimal but complete representation of UI state. To make your UI interactive, you need to be able to trigger changes to your underlying data model. React achieves this with state. To build your app correctly, you first need to think of the minimal set of mutable states that your app needs. The key here is DRI, don't repeat yourself. Figure out the absolute minimal representation of the state your application needs and compute everything else you need on demand. For example, you are building a to-do list. Keep an array of the to-do items around. Don't keep a separate state variable for the count. Instead, when you want to render the to-do count, take the length of the to-do items array. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, we also had that example with like the temperatures as Fahrenheit and Celsius, which where you just save one and convert them on the go. Yeah. Okay. Think of all the pieces of your data in our example application. We have the original list of products, the search text the user has entered, the value of the checkbox of products. Okay, interesting. Let's go through each one and figure out which one is state. Ask 3 questions about each piece of data. Is it passed in from a parent via props? If so, it probably isn't state. Does it remain unchanged over time? If so, it probably isn't state. Can you compute it based on any other state or props in your component? If so, it isn't state. Okay, makes sense. The original list of products is passed in as props, so that's not state. The search text and the checkbox seem to be state since they changed over time and can't be computed from anything. And finally, the filtered list of products isn't the state because it can be computed by combining the original list of products with the search text and value of the checkbox. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
If I didn't hear that, I would probably do like the filtered list of the products. I would save that as a state, maybe. But it makes sense like that. You just pass it as a prop. So finally, our state is the search text the user has entered, the value of the checkbox. Okay. Okay. Step 4, identify. Should we take a small break?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff here in this chapter.
These are just basically like a bunch of best practices, like how to proceed with the development of apps and so on.
Maybe we could set an example like this list for next time. We think of something ourselves and then try to apply all of these steps to it. And we sketch a small UI ourselves and then apply all of the steps and see if we have something functional and then react from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? One thing bugs me, and as we take the break, maybe we can discuss it a little bit. Is compatibility of React and AMP, if it's compatible whatsoever. I guess
Sorry?
not. AMP.
What? AMP and React?
Yeah, and React.
No, not at all, because.
So you are a big fan of AMP, right?
Yeah, but only for like search engine optimized websites. And we would like use React more for like not that SEO optimized websites.
Yeah. So AMP requires like a really very limited set of JavaScript if it
Nothing
allows.
at all.
No, it doesn't allow custom JavaScript, right?
Yeah, it has like also kind of strange way where you can add interactivity to it, but yeah, I mean, if we would like re-render it from on the back end with like Gatsby.js or Next.js, we could output AMP, but that could be possible. So, but if we would render it on the front end and have React, yeah, it wouldn't, I guess, not be possible to use AMP there. Yeah.
So AMP is primarily like for content heavy or content based web resources, right? More.
Yeah. For example,
articles like online shop, stuff like this.
An online shop can also get quite tricky with the checkout process, but there are some ways to do this in AMP. And yeah, I mostly used it for like online publishing.
Online publishing, so more like articles, stuff like this.
Yeah. Or if you have a marketing page, it's a really, really great fit, because I mean, there are many people who really dislike AMP because it's like a way of Google to control the web, but I mean, it's practically only Google anymore, at least for search engine.
But you know, they used to cache the content to Google, so the content would be served, the AMP content would be served from Google servers, but I guess they have now a possibility to do it like on third parties as well.
I didn't see. Do you have some resources about it? That would be really interesting for me to see that.
Yeah, I just heard something, but maybe we can have a separate discussion on the whole AMP thing. And I remember on our first attempt to create a community page, you even like went from the beginning with the AMP, right? And we wanted to put it on Jekyll.
Yeah, Jekyll also has no official support for AMP, but that's not important because it just
AMP is just HTML stuff, right?
Yeah,
it's
a subset with some specific differences and some custom HTML tags that aren't there in normal HTML5 or so.
Yeah, what I also don't like that the HTML validator, W3C validator, I guess is the official name, doesn't like AMP. I mean, it throws errors, like a lot of them. You know? If you supply AMP page for validation, it's not like for the validator, it's not a proper HTML5.
Yeah.
But browsers, I have never heard that browsers would have problems with this.
I mean, I'm a really lazy person, so I really like AMP because of all of the lazy loading and features and all of that stuff for images and content in general.
Yeah, in this sense, AMP is also great because, you know, in this expanding world, it's something what is finite, what is like a limited set of rules, components, and tags and so on. So it's not, because HTML5 is, you can do whatever you want with this. You can create your own tags and so on. And then CSS on top of it, and then JavaScript on top of it. All these frameworks. So it's crazy. You will never learn all the nice bits of all these languages and frameworks.
I mean, you also have like web workers, service workers, and all of that background JavaScript going on, Shadow DOM, all of that stuff. It's really crazy what you can do. But most of the time, you just need a very, very simple solution.
Yeah, I also don't like that many people use a lot of libraries just to do some little stupid stuff, what can be done also without. Like, for example, they would attach Bootstrap library or jQuery just to do like one query in the whole code, or Bootstrap to put nice H1 and paragraph, what can be done also without,
Yeah.
But it will.
I mean, writing 5 lines of CSS doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. But for this, you will like attach a whole blown library,
like 500 kilobytes of CSS just for that.
Yeah.
Or more.
So being minimalistic is not very bad, I think.
Yeah.
But nowadays, all this web metrics and so on, which Google provides with Lighthouse, I guess, is the name of the tool. So a lot of web developers or webmasters are starting to pay attention to this kind of things, like loading time, or like crazy rendering going on, or like pieces of content that jumping around and blinking and stuff like this.
Yeah, that's also a thing I really like about AMP, is that you have like placeholders and don't have like your image isn't loaded yet because you loaded lazily. So it has a height of 0, but with AMP it already packs like a full-sized placeholders in it. And it also has a really, really great layout system for images, for example, like fixed height layouts, responsive layouts, which maintain an aspect ratio or something like that, like a fill layout or many other great layouts. I really like that. It makes it much easier to do some stuff.
So what do you think? Would it make sense to just a general idea, because we are already like all the way into React and trying to learn Next.JS, what is also based on React, I guess, right? The whole engine and so on. And you have to know React, I guess, in order to operate or like set up Next.js. So for a community page and AMP, is it still a viable point, or is there not much sense for a community page, whereas there will be definitely a content? There will be articles written by community members separately or jointly, and there will be events like on meetup.com where you will have like an extended description of events, almost like an article.
I would do it with React, and we could then add like, with AMP, you have like 2 strategies. One is you have canonical AMP, what they call it, is that you just have one page that is made with AMP. And instead of that, you can use AMP additionally. So you have like a normal HTML version, which can be our React application, and an AMP version of that page, which is then just optimized for search. And we could use it as a separate SEO strategy.
That's interesting. Yeah, so it makes sense. Canonical is something what is like the source of truth, like the destination, final destination of the content. And for content heavy sides, you would probably like to have it as AMP as a canonical. So this is like the place where it is, and this is the final place. And for interactive web pages, like what we are planning to do is you can have content on your dynamic pages, but then in parallel or simultaneously, you can have an AMP version of it. What is the canonical? The canonical probably will be the interactive one, right?
Yes, and then you have like this is also what lots of publishers do. They have like very lightweight AMP pages that don't cover like all of the functionality, just the contents.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can switch to the normal version if you want.
Yeah, there's a definitely, or correct me if I'm wrong, the SEO, search engine optimization boost from Google for the AMP pages, right?
Sorry?
There is a preference from the search engine optimization perspective by Google to AMP pages, right? Comparing to the classic.
Because of its limitations and all of that stuff, it already has some advantages because you limit yourself to lots of stuff, but I guess they already cache it, which is like a huge thing for. Let me give you an example, like a motorcycling magazine I built. Okay, I'm here in the mobile search. I'm on Google here.
Mm-hmm.
And if I just click on that page, it's instantly there. And so you have a really, you can really reduce your bounce rate and all of that stuff of a website.
Mm-hmm.
So it just makes sense because it's also like an advantage that it's pre-cached on your local device by Google.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are some advantages, and also you save a little bit of your server workload if Google serves the content for you. I mean, this motorcycling magazine, which has really good traffic,
Mm-hmm.
I only pay like some cents per month for the traffic, and it's really cheap because all of the AMP.
Where are you hosting it actually?
Netlify. Yeah.
And you still pay something. Okay.
Yeah. It's because of build minutes, it's a little bit more.
Oh, okay, that's why.
Yeah.
So the content is not very static, so something in it is changing from time.
No, they release lots of articles. Yeah.
Oh, that's why. But it's not initiated by the users, the new generation, like generated.
It is.
Okay.
They are initiating it because they have lots of new content.
Like on a daily basis, or how often is it?
More often, I guess.
Wow.
2, 3 articles per day.
Wow, that's a lot. Nice.
Should we finish this chapter because it's like
yes. Let's finish it.
Then we are done with it and can move on. And
we have extended our time today a little bit.
Yeah, but to stop that
let's make a cut. Finish it and make a cut.
Yeah, then we can move on.
Sure.
Okay, step 4, identify where your state should live. See the pen, thinking in React, step 4 on CodePen. Okay, we don't do that. Okay, so we've identified what the minimal set of app state is. Next, we need to identify which component mutates or owns this state. Remember, React is all about one-way data flow down the component hierarchy. This may not be immediately clear which component should own what state. This is often the most challenging part for newcomers to understand, so follow these steps to figure it out. For each piece of state in your application, Identify every component that renders something based on that state. Find a common owner component, a single component above all the components that meet the state in the hierarchy. Either the component owner or another component higher up in the hierarchy should own the state. If you can't find a component where it makes sense to own the state, create a new component solely for holding the state and add it somewhere in the hierarchy above a common owner component. Okay. Let's run through the strategy for our application. Product table needs to filter the product list based on state and search bar. Needs to display the search text and checked state. The common owner component is filterable product table. It conceptually makes sense for the filtered text and checked value to live in filterable product table. Okay. Cool, so we've decided that our state lives in filterable product table. First, add an instance property this.state equals, and then we have a JSON object with the key filter text, which where an empty string is assigned to, and is stock only, which is false. In stock only, another key, which is set to false. To filterable product tables constructor. Okay, this state is set inside the constructor to reflect the initial state of your application. Then pass filter text and is in stock only to product table and search bar as a prop. Finally, use these props to filter the rows in product table and set the values of the form fields in search bar. Okay. You can start seeing how your application will behave. Set filter text to ball and refresh your app. You'll see that the data table is updated correctly. Okay. This is interesting. Step 5, add inverse data flow. See the pen, thinking in blah, blah, blah. So far, we've built an app that renders correctly as a function of props and state flowing down the hierarchy. Now it's time to support data flowing the other way. The form components deep in the hierarchy need to update the state in filterable product table. React makes this data flow explicit to help you understand how your program works. This does require a little more typing than traditional two-way data binding. If you try to type or check the box in the current version of the example, you'll see that React ignores your input. This is intentional, and we've set the value prop of the input to always be equal to the state passed in for filterable product table. Let's think about what we want to happen. We want to make sure that whether the user changes the form, we update the state to reflect the user input. Since components should only update their own state, filterable product table will pass callbacks to search bar that will fire whenever the state should be updated. We can use the onChange event on the inputs to be notified of it. The callbacks passed by filterable product table will call setState and the app will be updated. Okay, that was a lot of text. That's basically until the last two steps were like step 4 and step 5 is that we have to pass it down our data as, or our state as props. And then we also have to add those callback methods or callback handlers where we need it. Okay. That's basically what we already did like in the last time and yeah. And what we learned in the previous chapters. Okay. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it with tutorial. Well, we have one paragraph more to go.
Yeah. And that's it. Hopefully this gives you an idea of how to think about building components and applications with React. While this may be a little more typing than you're used to, remember that code then it's written, and it's less difficult to read this modular explicit code. As you start to build large libraries of components, you'll appreciate this explicitness and modularity. And with code reuse, your lines of codes will start to shrink. Nice. Yeah, give it a thumbs up. Okay. Should be like, again, wrap up this chapter, like that we first start with a mock and then try, or like a sketch, then try to to think of it in how we would modularize it into small components. Then we would start building a static version that doesn't pass data or manipulates data, just to see how this, just to build it and see how it would look like. Just see how our design would look like. And then we would like see which data we need at which part and in which component, and what is the minimal like logic we need in each component. Then we need to pass down like all of the then we would need to pass down all of the data to each component. And this is, how are they calling it? One-way data flow. That's basically what is step 4. And step 5 is inverse data flow, which is basically that you have to add callback methods as props to the other components, so you can actually get data back from components. Yeah.
That would be great to like start with very basic stuff next time and see how it actually works.
Yeah, maybe we could like build a small page or just a component for a page in React that represents like some functionality. Like, for example, registering for an event is maybe a little bit too much. But because we would need a database and advanced sign up and sign in, but we could maybe better to what we can use just do in the browser, and we don't need like to retrieve or send data to an API, because that would make it too difficult for like first examples. What would be more easy to do? What do you
like
think?
registering at the website would be one of the functionalities of such a page as what we intend to do. But again, it requires probably some other like connectivity to other backend stuff like APIs or whatever.
Yeah, maybe we could do like a body mass index calculator.
Yeah.
Something very, very easy in that way. So you can get better at React, and then maybe like 1 or 2 examples of pure React without like any connectivity to APIs or stuff like that. And then after we have like built some basic things, we can move on and
there is one page which I have built like, I don't know, like years ago. It's called password generator.top. I'm just posting it right now into the chat, and it uses pure JavaScript, and there are some input parameters you need to check, and then it generates password for you.
Nice.
That would be, but it's not like as great as I thought it would be. So there is some missing function like exclude pass characters which are looking similar. Like for example, big O, small o, and then 0. These are like very like similar looking. So I thought maybe to add functionality like exclude those characters.
Yeah, I oftentimes have this in my bookkeeping, where I use like where I scan PDFs, where I scan documents, and then after it's digitized, I don't then I have like a machine learning which tries to detect like the receipt number in LexOffice is what I use for bookkeeping, and then shit. Sorry, was I away for a second?
No, you were always there, I guess.
Okay, because I accidentally locked my computer. Yeah, so it can't like differentiate between O's and zeros, and that's really annoying.
But machine learning is solving this problem or not yet?
I mean, it really depends on what font you are using, so it can always vary a lot. Yeah.
But what you say is more sounds like OCR. I don't know how to transcript it. Like, let me see. What's the wrong version? C stands for it's optical character recognition. This is like I don't do it on my document, so I just scan them as picture or like document, PDF document, but it's inside nothing is recognized. I don't really need it, but if you're doing some kind of search indexing for these documents, I mean that.
No, it's mostly like a gimmick, but sometimes it's used to like to match like your bank transactions to the receipt.
Yeah, that would be useful. So yeah, there is also signs or characters like small l and number 1. These are also being messed up frequently and stuff like this. So I mean, something like this, again, tool like this could be also written also in pure JavaScript. And it's a simple tool, right? It's like almost like a BMI calculator. Why you need a React library for the whole thing? If you can go with like inline JavaScript, like a couple of functions.
Yeah, but what else would be interesting? I saw you started like a repository on GitHub, which is like some hourly fee rate calculator, something like that. What was that all about?
Yes.
Was it just something for you?
No, it's that's something what I would also probably need. So basically, you would say like my rate is this and that. Like I don't know, like 100 pesetos, whatever your rate is, and currency. And then you worked for someone like this number of hours and minutes. So it's not always fixed hours. It's also like it can go into minutes specific.
Yeah. What would be interesting there is if you would like round to like a quarter of an hour or half an hour. If you would round down and up for that.
So with some customers, you might round up it like for quarter of an hour, and they will be fine with this. But maybe I don't know. There will be some works which should be like rounded up to 5 minutes. Exactly.
Or maybe even like with a second of precision.
Wow, that would be very precise, but who knows? Who knows?
But I would prefer it to be rounded up.
Yes. Yeah, that's thing with the work. You never know, because the actual work when you work is counted, but then the time when you still think about the project and in your spare time, that's always what is neglected in many cases. But in this time, you might come up with amazing idea, which will be which will contribute to your work for this customer or this employer.
Yeah.
So yeah, it will be super difficult to precisely calculate. I think we're just using this time generally, like in consultancy, as a rule of thumb, like just to know in which kind of like in which dimension you are involving yourself in. It's not like exactly to the minute. And what will be what are the tasks which you are performing, because it's not only hours usually what you have to write down, but also what has been done in this time slot.
Yeah.
So something like this would be also something like a JavaScript and dynamic and so on, where you would put your rate and then your time which you worked for your
maybe
customer.
we could like think of some things until next week and draw some sketches and try to build something like that in React.
Yes.
Would be great. And if it's not that like big of a product, it could be done in 2 weeks, 2 hours.
Yeah, so let's next time play with React a little bit, and then maybe as a meeting after the next one, we can slightly like jump into the Next.JS. Okay.
Nice.
Okay, Lucas, so let's not extend it any further. It was already like extended enough for today. Thanks for the session, and
thanks.
That was interesting, definitely.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
see you and Victor and everyone else who is watching us or will be watching. See you next time.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.